All right, fellas, if you're listening to this podcast within a few days of its release, it is masterclass time again. For the month of July, let's put it this way. I've pulled out all the stops. I'm swinging for the fence. I am about to wreck men's dating advice as you know it. And it's all going to happen this coming Wednesday, the 30th of July, 2025 at 8 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. Well, what's going to be this disruptive topic, you say? It's very simple, actually. Nobody's talking about it, but it's very simple. Gentlemen, the pickup artist movement has been dead for 15 years. And now, even though nobody's talking about it, maybe because they're scared to, online dating and apps are dead as a doornail as well. Now, when the pickup artist movement stopped being a thing, guys kind of just went their own way. You know, the MGTOW guys, we were never really given anything to replace it with in terms of going out and meeting women, except we had online dating and apps. But now, with the abject frustration surrounding dating sites and apps, guys have given up on those too. So what's left? Well, that's what this masterclass is going to talk about. Guys, you still have a computer, you still have a smartphone, you still have a desire to go out there and meet women and attract the high quality ones into your life. So what do you do now? Without relying on pickup artist tactics that are extinct, or now without relying on dating apps or sites either. I'm going to reveal a completely new way of thinking out of the box that encompasses meeting women in real life and using your computer and smartphone to do it. This masterclass is called Beyond Dating Sites and Apps, the Early Adopter's Guide to Digital Attraction. And it's all happening this coming Wednesday, the 30th of July, 2025 at 8 p.m. Grab your ticket to this all-important masterclass at mountaintoppodcast.com/masterclass. Gentlemen, you will have never heard anything that's going to be covered in this masterclass ever before. But once the veil is lifted, you're going to wonder what took you so long to think of all these amazing new ways of attracting women and filling your social calendar. And yet, nobody else is talking about it or even doing it yet. You'll be way ahead of all those other guys after you attend this masterclass. Once again, get your ticket at mountaintoppodcast.com/masterclass. And now, enjoy this fun and exciting podcast with my new friend, Peter Moore. And gentlemen, remember, the video version is there for you at mountaintoppodcast.com/YouTube. Enjoy. You can find the video version of this episode at mountaintoppodcast.com/YouTube.
Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scot McKay.
All right, how's it going, gentlemen? Welcome to yet another episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. As always, I am your host, Scot McKay. You can find me on a myriad of social media platforms. Not all of them, but close to all of them, at Scot McKay. On TikTok, on X, on Truth Social, and on YouTube. You can find me at Real Scot McKay on Threads. Don't go there, it's terrible. And especially on Instagram. Guys, if you haven't been to the mountaintoppodcast.com lately, I don't know why I'm shaking my head while I say that. That's like a subliminal, non sequitur.
Yes,
I definitely do think you should go to my website. Yeah. And so does my guest. And when you go there, you'll be able to check in on the latest masterclasses, download the free book, Sticking Points Solved, check out all the show notes. It's generally a lot of fun over at mountaintoppodcast.com. The Facebook group, as always, we welcome you with open arms. See, that was the right gesture for the right moment. For those of you guys who are watching, even Peter will welcome you to the Facebook group, which he hasn't joined yet, but I'm assuming he will. And that's at the Mountaintop Summit on Facebook. So who is this illustrious guest who is already mirroring my actions because he knows how to be social? Well, his name is Peter Moore, and he's a columnist, a writer, an illustrator, and former editor of Men's Health magazine, which I have been a contributor to. I don't know if it was in your time or not, but maybe a little bit after that. He's also got a Substack, which is just excellent reading, and we'll send you guys to that later. He lives in Fort Collins, Colorado, which is just a beautiful place. Hence, look at that studio he's got. It's so Coloradan. And today we're going to talk about, perhaps ironically enough, given how well he and I are already making friends, the pandemic of loneliness. Well, Peter, here's your formal welcome to the show. Thanks for being on, man.
Oh, it's great to be here and to meet all of your many thousands of guys who are on here. And we all have that in common, right? We're navigating what masculine life is these days, and that ain't easy, as I know, because I used to be the editor of Men's Health magazine.
You also have a lot of unhealthy men. So it's a raging topic. Yeah. Yeah,
it was one of the big mysteries for me when I came on at Men's Health. I was aware of the age gap between or the longevity gap between men and women. Women can expect to live 4, 5, 6 years longer than the average guy. And, I started looking into that as the editor of a health magazine. And really, the topic that we're talking about today, loneliness, the ways that guys interact, is one of the main theories behind it, that because we don't interact as well as the women in our lives do, that's going to be a death sentence for us if we don't take action. So not to threaten your listeners with sudden death or anything, but it's really, this subject is that big and that important.
Or it could be that women are killing us softly.
Well, yeah, but, oh, honey, have an extra dessert, that kind of thing.
Well, you know what? I kid, because the truth of the matter is peer-reviewed study after study says that married men actually live longer.
Yeah, and they have more sex too, so thank goodness for that. But yeah, I consider
that depends on how much game you have.
The healthiest thing I ever did was, that cute woman who I interviewed for a job at a magazine company I was working for. This was, several decades ago. I saw something in there that, we were relating in a great way, and she's been with me since then. And, a lot of what I do to be healthy is because of Men's Health magazine and editing that for 20 years. But also a good portion of it is that Claire McKay is in my life, and she's urging me in that direction too.
Now, is she your main squeeze or a business associate?
She's my wife.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, as of
that wasn't quite clear.
Yeah. Okay. No, thanks for that.
I didn't know if this was a Batman-Batgirl thing or a husband-wife thing, so thank you for clarifying.
God, I wish we'd have cooler cars than we do.
That much is true, although my wife probably has a cooler car anyway because she's mama and that's what she gets. Yeah. So let's talk about this pandemic of loneliness. You kind of joked about personal loneliness during our brief time getting to know each other and making a little bit light of it, but it's not funny at all. A lot of guys out there are just absolutely alone. A lot of people in general are. And, I want to let you go ahead and riff on what you believe to be the reasons why that is and how we got here before I say anything. Have at it, first person.
I'll just briefly share my own experience here. My wife and I had 2 sons. This is back during my Men's Health days. We used to call ourselves the wolf pack, or, the 3 of us. Because, we did everything together. Then they turned 13 and all of a sudden, it was obnoxious of them, but they insisted on having their own friends and their own lives. And I could see them turning away from me to the things that were most important in their own lives. And when they turned away, I realized that I had been focusing on my career and my family to the exclusion of something that I used to be really good at, which was making friends. And having like a wide group of male friends that I could play basketball with, that I could go on hiking trips with, that, I could get together with if times were tough. And somehow I just let those skills atrophy in my life. I'm not the only one. I just did a post on my Substack called The Cure for Loneliness. And one of the stats I came up with when I was working on that post was that, as of 20 years ago, more than half of men had 5 or more what they considered to be close friends. So we're only talking about like the turn of the century here in the year 2000. Fast forward to today, only a quarter of men say they have 5 close friends. Then, as you mentioned, all the medical studies, you line them right up, and guys are walking into an early grave if they let their friend group lapse. And, since I had that stark realization that I don't have friends, when my kids were in their early teens, I started developing what I think of as the skills to seek those friends out and, make sure I get together with them. There's nothing hard about it. You just have to get over that whole, I'm lonely now. Then the next leap can be, I deserve to be lonely because I'm a jerk. And who would like me anyway? That's one way that you could go. The other way is, oh, why don't I call up my friend Doug and see if he wants to go out to lunch or go on a bike ride or go on a hike? All that stuff that guys love to do, other guys love to do. So the potential is there, but you have to be the instigator. And that was something I was uncomfortable with before. I'm not uncomfortable with it anymore.
You brought up several wonderful points, several of which we have covered on this show, and at least one that we haven't. I've never heard the angle that it's kind of a self-esteem thing or a self-confidence thing that would prohibit us from picking up the phone and saying, hey, dude, you want to go out and do this? You want to go out and do that? Thinking we'd be rejected by this guy. Like, why would I want to do that? What, are you gay? Are you hitting on me? Why would you want to hang out? It seems like we as guys have this weird aversion to hanging out with other dudes because A, we're afraid we're going to look gay for hitting on them, and B, because I really rather not. I just want to sit home and drink beer anyway. I mean, you're going to make me go out and do something. That part we've talked about before, but I think we project that feeling onto other guys. It's really our own insecurities.
Yeah, and the other thing I think of the natural world is full of solitary males of various species. Every fall, I go up to Rocky Mountain National Park, which is near my house, and go there for the elk rut. And, it's basically a bunch of dude elks, like gathering together a group of ladies to have sex with. And, I fully support elk in that. But what they're not doing when they're not having sex with the lady elk, they are battling, those great horn antlers clashing together, to drive off other males who want to have sex with their lady. Most of us don't really have to worry about that, I hope, anyway. But
other guys not being of our elk, right?
That instinct to drive off the other males, to compete with them, was certainly something, I felt in the office, largely a male office at Men's Health. It was like, there was a lot of competition going on there for our daily bread, we felt like. So there was like, you were in your silo, you were trying to do it better than the other guy. And if possible, you could undercut that other guy to get ahead of him. So, that whole male competition thing is, I think, it's a real thing. The solitariness of males is a real thing. But I also think that, deep down inside us, we're all marshmallows too. We want to be loved. We want to seek out love. We want to feel like we have a good crowd of friends, to watch the Super Bowl with, or to, right now the NBA playoffs are on. Who am I going to watch the big game with? All those questions come up, and it's that self-esteem thing is, oh gosh, if I put it out to my friends and ask them if they want to watch the game with me, they might laugh at me. Maybe they don't want to be with me. Maybe they want to be with me for 3 hours, watching basketball, whatever it is. That self-esteem thing can get in the way of the thing we need most in our lives, which is to establish those relationships. And I'm not talking about a romantic relationship here, just talking about the guys hanging together, and your gay guys and straight guys, they all have the same needs for friendships that are outside of a romantic relationship, but are giving them that food of connection that is so critical to how happy we'll be.
Do you think gay guys and straight guys can be friends?
I have gay friends, absolutely.
I do too.
No problem there. I mean, I
think it's easier now than it was 10 or 15 years ago.
For sure. And thank you, society, for making a turn there to just acknowledge that, we're all in this together. So it's not like, so I have one wife. That's the way I choose to roll here. But it doesn't mean I can't be friends with heterosexual women. It doesn't mean I'm going to have sex with them. What it means is that we have a connection, based on all sorts of things that aren't included in the complication of, sex and romance. And, there's a reason why. I actually have two
lesbian friends. They're awesome. Yeah. I don't know if I hang out with them regularly.
Yeah, I mean, so you just sweep the whole sex thing off to the side, whoever you like to do it with. We're talking about something very different here, which is, who do you have to go to who you can just have a talk? or just have a laugh, or just have a hamburger. It's
well,
like
I think
all
it is
those
worth
things.
mentioning. I do think it is worth mentioning that the idea of feeling low self-esteem or like that I'm going to be rejected on the part of men is usually tied to approaching women and asking them out.
Mm-hmm.
That's the stereotype, that I feel like I'm
Right.
going to be rejected when I ask a woman out. That's the context you usually hear that sort of talking in. But
Yeah.
it's very true that if I'm approaching a guy, I want to make friends with him, I think guys don't give it much thought. We don't really let it weigh on us like, oh gosh, I'm not going to get laid or anything if I don't approach women and get a girl. There's less of a biological need that needs to be fed there on the part of that guy who's looking at it strictly from a pickup artist perspective, right?
Uh-huh.
Which, by the way, we're not around here, but I'm saying salute to the guys who I know feel that way, of which there are legion, okay? But yeah, I mean, it takes something to go and make friends with another guy. I have seen the studies that you cited that talk about how more men have fewer friends. One of them that I saw said the average number of self-described close friends that men have, the average number is 0, which is horrifying, right? And yet, what I do know about how men make acquaintances and turn those acquaintances into friends is they're usually gathering around a common mission or a common purpose or at least a common interest. Like we're all Harley guys, or we're all in the volunteer fire department together in this rural community, or we all served in the Marines together, military experiences. Anytime you see movies like American Sniper or watch SEAL Team, all these guys who have been in the trenches together, perhaps literally, they're buddies for life. If you watch the movie 1917, that's about two best friends literally in the trenches together. And it's a great movie. You know what I mean? And I think we love those movies as guys, and we kind of long for having this camaraderie that is ride or die. Like, these are my boys, dude. We all want that, but I think if we take it from, I don't know whether this is top down or bottom up, frankly, but if we look at it from the opposite perspective and go, what am I not being a part of? What group that I should be a part of? What interest, what passion that I don't have is missing in my life? Therefore, having my dudes who were in that passion with me are therefore also missing. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like all of us are going to go play for the Indianapolis Colts, or we're going to be in the NBA together or be in a minor league bus, traveling from city to city. I talked to a guy the other day that was his lifestyle for years, and he still talks to all those guys, Bull Durham stuff. A lot of guys just lack that passion and that interest, and they're home playing video games and watching porn and not even getting out of the house, especially post-pandemic. And we just don't know anybody because we don't do anything. We just lay around being couch potatoes. So which is it? Where's that cart and that horse, that chicken and the egg in that situation? What's saying
when I moved to Colorado, especially the area in Colorado where I live now, you can't help but see Long's Peak, which is the only 14,000 foot mountain in Rocky Mountain National Park. You can't help see it from everywhere in town here. And as soon as I moved to Fort Collins, I said, I want to go up there, which is appropriate for the Mountaintop podcast.
For sure.
And, it took me a few years, but I found a group of guys who I also knew were hikers and who were up for a big challenge. And, one summer we just set our goal. We set a date. We're going to climb Long's Peak on September 2nd. We're going to get in shape for it. We have a mission. We've got this awesome mountain that every year 4 or 5 guys die while trying to climb it. So we were like,
that's no way to make friends.
Yeah, really. You know what? It was our version of the trenches. I never served in the Army. I don't know what it's like to be in a trench, but our trench was climbing Long's Peak, not falling off of it, and again, having a great day climbing Long's Peak. And, we made it up there based on all the studying we did in advance mutually to plan the hike, the hikes we did to get in shape for it, and, dividing up who's going to carry what, making the reservations that we needed to get into the park, all that stuff. We had a mission there, but the mission was in support of a growing friendship that the three of us had. And just to continue another moment, I remember, we were on the side of this sheer cliff, going up Long's Peak, and At one point, I came across a boulder that was bigger than a refrigerator that was like across the trail, and I just didn't know how I was going to get up there. Fortunately, my buddies were standing on top of the rock. They had scrambled up it, and they both stuck a hand down for me. I reached up and grabbed them, and they helped pull me up that rock. And when I got onto the top, I just looked at the two of them and I said, "You guys are my brothers for life because you helped me over that." And it was a big moment, and they are still good friends, and we still go on hikes together. It's like that kind of difficult moment get through with your buddies. It could be, your marriage is failing and they're the ones who talk you through it. It could be that one of your kids is sick, you lose a job. Having your guy friends around to pull you up over that rock is one of the most meaningful things and meaningful relationships you can have in your life.
In the first world, it seems like we do live a sanitary culture, relatively speaking. There's a lot more danger. There's a lot more of a visceral existence in the developing world, and certainly in times past compared to now. We can sort of just DoorDash our way through life, watch other people have adventures on television, and do what I call the suburban sleepwalk unaffectionately. And what that does is I think it breeds people who are entitled and they complain. And everything sucks. And then what we do is we get on social media where we don't have to actually face the people we're criticizing. We can do that from afar. And people just turn into monsters socially. They're just real critical and they hate everything and hate all sorts of things, as a friend of mine used to say, which is funny. And this is the habit we get into of being real cynical and being lacking trust for anything because, especially during COVID and we were fed so much by the media and got on social media and the height of misinformation and disinformation. There's even misinformation and disinformation about what the meaning of misinformation and disinformation is at a meta level. It's nuts. And so people nowadays are so afraid of everything that could possibly be hiding behind any bush. Not just women, but men too. We're all scared. We're all cynical and we're all negative. And that's also another way not to go through life. Fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through life. Dying is no way to make a living, and being cynical and negative and hateful is also no way to make friends. And then, I don't want to gloss over the advent of virtual reality, literally with the goggles and porn and social media and AI. We got to talk about AI here. And all of that's just replacing real, visceral, face-to-face humanity. It's even, you talk about guys making friends. It's literally replacing sex for a lot of men. And this has got to stop. We've got to snap out of it because none of this, especially when it comes to social media, the internet, and now AI, none of that's a fad. It's not going away. That Pandora's box has long since been open. So how do we fight this? How do we snap out of it? How do we first recognize, hey, you know what, this is going to make us lonelier? And then how do we force ourselves out of this suburban sleepwalk and motivate ourselves?
Well, I think it's a self-preservation thing. If you want to look at, what's going to happen to you later on in your life if you are that social loner, not only are you going to die earlier, but you're going to be, at risk for any of the maladies that, kill us guys, heart attack, stroke. I don't know if you're familiar with the Robert Putnam book, Bowling Alone. It's kind of the classic book on this subject of the epidemic of loneliness. But the point he makes is that if you're not putting yourself out there, it's going to induce the spiral that's going to lead to your death. But
it's going to make you sedentary too.
Get all dark about this. It's fun to so I bought a e-mountain bike last fall, and I just wrote about this on my Substack, where I was just noticing how laying in that major piece of technology all of a sudden activated this whole group of friends I didn't know who were e-mountain bikers. So I was, talking to a buddy of mine after church one Sunday, and, his eyes were aglow about his e-mountain bike, which is the reason why I bought it. But then he started inviting me to go with his buddies on these big mountain bike loops that he and his friends were riding. And, I don't have a lot of skills as a mountain biker, but I'm developing more. The best thing about it is that piece of technology looped me into a great group of guys who are extremely active, who, every week I have several invites to go on mountain biking trips. And halfway through the trip, we stop at a brewery and have a beer and, hey, how's it going for you? So it's like we've got the activity first. Activity brings the proximity of guys around you, and that proximity means that you're going to be having beer and conversation with guys who you didn't know before. So is that better than sitting at home? Like, even as great a game as I've been watching in the NBA playoffs, any game I watch alone, the NBA playoffs, is not going to be quite as good as a hike or a mountain bike ride that I take with my buddies. And, this whole being focused on our screens, staring at our stupid phones, these things are a barrier between us and the world and the people who we need to be interacting with. And we need to put these suckers down and talk to people. And it's just going to make your life a lot more fun if you do it.
Going out and being social is definitely a great step towards building acquaintances and making some friends. I've noticed, though, that the guys I'm the closest friends with are the same men who were either there for me or vice versa when something major, stressful, or perhaps life-threatening was happening.
One of my best male men friends right now is a guy who I met in a grief group. Again, my church is a whole thing there too, and a great way for men to become integrated, especially if they're feeling isolated. Pick a church, any church, as long as you feel good about it. That's all you need to know. But anyway, I was going to a grief group in this church that we joined when we moved to Fort Collins, and there was a guy there who was going through, his mother had Alzheimer's, and he was looking ahead to her end, the same time right after my own mom died. And, the two of us got talking after one of the meetings. It led to a very close friendship between the two of us. And it turns out that both of us had worked for the same magazines in New York. And here we were meeting in Fort Collins. So it's like looking at this guy across the room and sympathizing with him. I wouldn't have known anything about him. But it turned out that, as I heard what he was saying and I reacted to it and shared what I was feeling too, it gave us a pretext to move our friendship, out beyond this grief group. And, that was 8 years ago now. And, I just went out to lunch with him yesterday. So it's, it's that kind of making yourself vulnerable and available and really listening to people as opposed to just being like into what you're feeling, what your problems are, how resentful you are of everything. If you can discipline yourself to look out, see what other people are feeling, ask them about it, just shut up and listen when they talk. All of those social skills are super important. I feel like guys maybe on average don't have them to the degree that the women in our lives do. But just because you don't have a skill doesn't mean that you can't develop it. If you're a terrible putter in golf, you're going to practice that. If you are lonely, you need to practice those behaviors, activities that will get you out there and relating to other people.
Yeah, I think that's a good word. When stuff gets real in life, people get real. Two people who really can't stand each other. And you're seeing this relatively recently. The President Biden disclosed that he had cancer, and all the people who had been just shredding him were like, "Oh man, well we didn't want you to get cancer, dude. We didn't want that to happen. We're glad you're not president anymore, but dude, that sucks. We hope you feel better." You know what I mean? And also when Donald Trump was shot at and someone grazed his ear, one of the first people to say, "Man, that really sucks, man. We're sorry that happened," was Joe Biden. So, I think people realize as important as things like world peace and the economy and politics and, whether your kid beats mine, on the soccer field or not, there's some weight to that in life. It's the life or death stuff. It's health, it's family. When that hits a crisis pitch, people get very real and very vulnerable with each other. And it's a shame it has to come to that. It's a shame that something of crisis proportion has to happen before everybody, lets their guard down and says, man, let's just be human with each other. We kind of need each other here. I've always kind of lamented that. I've always wondered how we got there because, again, not to belabor it, but you go to a third world country, you go to a developing country where people, it's very raw. Everybody's in the same somewhat desperate position and they're helping each other through it day to day. And life is a visceral existence minute by minute. Those people are vulnerable and real with each other all the time, unless they're a warring tribe or something. But I mean, we've lost that in this culture. I mean, you look at the greatest generation of all time during World War II, right? I mean, we were all united under the cause of, beating the Nazis and beating the Japanese Empire. And nowadays we go around calling each other Nazis for political fun. I mean, it's just, we've lost that sense of depth as humans and that Viktor Franklian search for meaning that we're all going through together. I think we just whitewash it and go through life thinking, nothing really matters. I can say or do whatever I'm going to do without consequence. If someone else gets hurt, I call it the Siri effect. People have gotten so used to just being rude to Siri because it's not a human being that they're being rude to everybody. And, social media and the anonymity of, being able to make YouTube comments doesn't help that. But there is something to be said for this return to human vulnerability and getting real with each other that I think would allow us to feel a lot less lonely, even if it unfortunately would signal we're probably having to go through a crisis to get there. It's ironic, isn't it?
Yeah. It's just it's one of the markers of our age that, we go into cocoons now because our cocoons are really freaking comfortable with, Netflix on 24/7 and food delivery to our door. But it's really cutting us off to what's most important in life. And, let's be honest about it. It's awkward to reach out to people. You don't know how they're going to react. You make yourself vulnerable and you could be laughed at or made fun of. But what we have to realize too is that, okay, that's a sure sign. If somebody's making fun of you or, slamming the door in your face, that person isn't going to be a friend. But if we look around, purposefully, look for maybe people who are hurting, people who can help, people who see that we're hurting and can help us. I mean, that's where a real relationship is formed. You're not going to have a real relationship, with the cutie on sexygirls.com. But you are going to have a real relationship with your neighbor who you talk to over the fence and borrow.
Let me write that URL down again. What was that? Sexy.
I think I made that up, and it probably exists actually. But yeah, I mean, so let's keep our focus on the real world. I mean, I'm not ruling out. I mean, I like to watch Netflix as much as the next guy, but I don't do it to the exclusion of everything else that's worthwhile and vital in my life. So,
balance.
A ski day with my buddy is going to be better than whatever series I'm watching on Netflix. That hut trip I take in the mountains of Colorado is going to be a more intense bonding experience, than I'll ever get, from going, doom scrolling on a random morning to see what screwed up thing is happening in the world now. So let's make the circle closer, fill it with human beings, and that's where life is going to find us.
About a year ago, I was really on a soapbox about AI and this advent of AI girlfriends and how, if we are indeed created in God's image of having free will, it isn't going to be very fulfilling to have something do your bidding because it has to, not because it wants to, whatever that entity is. And, a year later, that's starting to feel like people don't want to hear actors talk. ChatGPT, AI is moving at a feverish rate forward. It's horrifying to me. And I'm getting more and more people who are treating ChatGPT like a rent-a-friend. They're having conversations with ChatGPT. Actually, that was so 6 months ago. Nowadays, I have people who will hire me to be their coach. And they'll just text me what's going on. And then they'll text me their chat sessions with ChatGPT and ask me what I think of the ChatGPT sessions they were having. And I go, somehow this doesn't feel like what I do for a living as a coach. And finally, one day I just said to one of these guys, I said, how many actual friends do you have? You seem to me like a guy who really needs a friend. Well, I need to do all this self-work, and you're going to help me with that, and ChatGPT is going to help me with that, and I need to run all this by you before I go out and make friends. I go, well, it seems to me you're treating us like friends. Like you're treating a robot like friends. You're treating your coach like a friend. I mean, yeah, I'm happy to be friendly with you, but, I have a purpose. I'm a hired professional in your life. I'm helping you get results. Why don't we flip this script and go out and make some friends and see if it helps you get over some of these things that you're struggling with? And he's like, what a novel idea. I'm like, go figure. I really think there's a danger here that our priorities are going to devolve rather than evolve into thinking this is the way things are done now. Probably we're going to say this is the way because we've been watching Mandalorian instead of going out and making friends. But it seems like this is the new normal. Remember during the pandemic, we were talking about the new normal? The new normal seems like robots are our friends and people are expendable now. People are tools. It's bizarre.
Garbage in, garbage out still applies to AI. And just because there's more garbage being fed into that means that there's going to be more garbage coming out of it. We can't mistake things that happen when we open up our computers for personal interactions because most of the times interactions with bots, and bots by definition are stupid. And even as they get smarter, they're not going to be flesh and blood human beings. Mm-hmm. So, it's like, I use AI for work. I don't rely on it for relationships or conversation because I'm having plenty of those in the real world. And there's just no way that, AI isn't going to hug you back. A friend will. AI isn't going to support you in your time of need in the way that you need it. A good friend will. So, it's like, I'm not going to join the doomsayers because like when radio came on, there were people talking about radio's going to ruin the world. The same thing with television. The same thing for PCs. The same thing for social media. It's just you pick your technology of the moment. People are going to say, that's the end of the world. So far, so good. The world hasn't ended. So, I'm not going to say that AI certainly is useful in a lot of ways. It's not your best friend. So you need your AI and your friend, but you got to make sure that you have the friend too.
What are your tips for guys who are really resonating with what we're talking about here, Peter, and saying to themselves, man, I got to go out and make some friends. I got to go out and hang out with some real people. What are the first steps here?
Well, it's a little challenging when somebody said, yeah, go make friends. Oh yeah, easy for you to say, jerk. But what we used to talk about in men's health.
Be confident,
What we used to talk about in men's health was how women specialize in face-to-face conversations, right? I mean, they're like, oh, we haven't talked forever. Let's go out for coffee and talk. Like, I don't know a guy who's ever said to me, let's go out for a coffee and talk. Guys are more shoulder-to-shoulder socializers, meaning we're on a road trip. You're sitting next to me in the car. We've got tunes on the CD player or on, we're streaming tunes. And we're, headed off for wherever, the mountains. That's shoulder to shoulder. So there's time there for, God, I'm excited about our trip. But there's also time for, how have you been? Wasn't your older son in some trouble a while ago? What's going on with that? So there's time for, when you're shoulder to shoulder, there's time for the activity that you're pursuing. But there's also lulls in the activity where, some real interchanges happen. So for guys who are listening to this, thinking about friends, what are your shoulder to shoulder activities? Maybe it's the local minor league baseball team. Baseball games are a great place to go and talk to a guy because baseball is so freaking boring and goes on for so long that you're going to be almost forced to have a regular conversation there. Same thing for watching.
Especially if you're an Orioles fan this year.
There's always halftime. I apologize to your Murray Giants jersey wearing man. But I
have no allegiance to the team. I just went to a game and thought it was fun, so I bought the jersey. Yeah.
So what I would say is that there are, if you're a guy and feeling isolated, what you need to do is look around in your life. Maybe these are interests you haven't picked up in 20 years. Maybe you played the guitar in college, but you don't anymore. Find a group that's jamming and join it. Find a place where you can go to pursue your interests. Like my son belongs to one of these maker spaces in Denver. All sorts of guys in there working with all sorts of technology, explaining it to each other, but also hanging out. And, oh, what's your project about? Oh, that's cool. I'm working on this one. It's like you need to find your place, find your way into those places where your potential friends will gather, and just invest in it, as opposed to all the time you would say, have pounding your keyboard. Get out, close the computer, be where humans are.
Yeah, and that's about getting out of your comfort familiarity zone too, because we as men love our setup. We get everything the way we have it, just so, and then we get into habits and we don't deviate from them. And the next thing you know, we're Ted Kaczynski. We're hermits. Yeah, I think that's good stuff. I think that was a good word.
Yeah, he's a perfect example, Ted Kaczynski. And it's also in the Robert Putnam book, Bowling Alone, talking about how men who are socially isolated tend to be the ones who become extremists of all sorts.
That's true.
So the loner is the guy who hides in the bushes and picks off pedestrians walking by. It's always the first thing that you after a mass shooting, they go talk to the neighbors. Did you know this guy was nuts? And they say, well, he pretty much kept to himself. Keeping to yourself is the number one indicator for being a nut job. And we don't want to be nut jobs. We want to be out there in the world.
That could be the name of this podcast. Don't be a lonely nut job. Well, I'm so glad you and I met each other and we're not nut jobs and we're out there not being lonely. Right. And what I want to do is I want to send these guys to your Substack, Peter, that we talked about at the beginning of this show. It's Peter Moore, Substack.com. Moore with two O's, of course. I think Sir Thomas More is the only Moore I know of who doesn't have two O's as a surname.
Oh, I lived in Pennsylvania, and there were a lot of MOHRs there, too, a German surname.
Oh, yeah. Well.
Anyway, yeah, it's petermoore.substack.com is where you'll find me twice a week, delighting my 12,000 subscribers.
12,001, baby.
Oh, baby, yes. Woo!
Yeah. Everyone counts, man. Hey, you froze giving me one of these. It was kind of a cool moment in the video. It was almost like it was done on purpose to highlight it. Like in an anime when they go, and they just
Yeah, exactly. Well, I wanted to give the full thumbs up time to register.
Well, I'm so glad you did. That was very cool, actually. And guys, if you go to mountaintop.podcast.com/, let's just make it Peter Moore, PeterMoor, because I've had a Peter and I've had a Moore before, so let's do Peter Moore. And you'll also go to his Substack if you follow that link, if you're listening along and it's too much to remember, which I don't think it is, but that's what we've been doing for nearly 500 shows, so why stop now? mountaintoppodcast.com/Peter Moore. What a great conversation. You brought up so many salient points, and I really think this is going to resonate with the guys. Thank you so much for joining us today, Peter. Hope you'll come back.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And hey, let's be friends.
Well, let's do that thing, man. You live in Colorado. I should come out and have a beer with you because there's some of the greatest beer ever in Colorado.
Now, see, there you are. You're already getting over your feelings of possible rejection and inviting me out for a beer. I'm there. I'll buy you a beer.
Thanks, man. Yeah. And I'll buy you the second one. Good. This is opening up a whole can of worms, but just for the record, and this doesn't require any additional feedback, I just want to make sure it's said in the show. A lot of guys who are recovering alcoholics or just don't drink often find it hard to make groups of guy friends because they always go to a bar, they always get a beer together, and they feel like, well, I'm going to have a Diet Coke and be the designated driver or something. But I think that's the solution. It's baked right in, right?
Well, yeah, it isn't like alcohol is the answer to anything. And I'm not even that big a drinker. When you said you'd buy me the second beer, I never have the second beer because, I'm out cold by the time I finish the first one. It's all about finding that moment to relate, which you can do on a bicycle. You can do it on a bar stool. You can be, sitting in the bleachers at Wrigley Field. All those places are great places for guys to get together, and you'll find your moments to really connect if you do that.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, so right on the money. Thanks again for being on, man. I really appreciate you and the work you do.
You're very welcome.
And guys, if you haven't been to mountaintoppodcast.com lately, we talked about the free goodies you can find there. Also, be sure to sign up to get on the phone, talk to me personally for 25 to 30 minutes. I don't play a fictional character. I'm the same guy you think I'm going to be. My passport says Scot McKay on it. One time somebody said, "Hey, is Scot McKay your real name?" I said, "Listen, if it wasn't, I would spell it right if it was going to be, a fake name." But alas, my parents left that second T off. Saved me a bunch of keystrokes over the course of my lifetime, but a whole lot of correcting people instead say, "No, that's not me. That's some other guy." But indeed, get on my calendar. Let's talk for 20, 25 minutes. You've got feedback on the show. That's cool. If we want to talk about how to get you a better life with more women in it, more male friends. If you just want to make acquaintance, hey, I'm up for that too. Get on my calendar at mountaintoppodcast.com. Also, gentlemen, check out our three main sponsors, Jocko Willink's Company Origin in Maine, the Keyport and Heroes Soap. All three of our fine, longtime sponsors will help man you up. Great stuff, great products from good people. Use the coupon code MOUNTAIN10 whenever you get something from one of our sponsors to get an additional 10% off. All of that and so much more is there for you at mountaintoppodcast.com as always. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scot McKay from X&Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.